The sun rose gently over the distant hills, casting golden light across the quiet valley below. Birds sang melodies of dawn, their voices weaving a tranquil harmony. I sat beneath a banyan tree, awaiting the arrival of the Buddha. The other disciples gathered slowly, their faces a mixture of eagerness and uncertainty. When the Buddha appeared, his steps were calm, his presence a serene force of nature. He approached with an alms bowl in hand, empty yet held with reverence. "Good morning, my friends," he said, his voice like a flowing river. "What does an empty bowl mean to you?" The question lingered in the air, like a leaf caught on the breeze. Ananda stepped forward, his head bowed slightly. "Master, an empty bowl is a sign of humility and reliance on the generosity of others." The Buddha nodded, his eyes filled with a depth that transcended words. He sat among us, placing his empty bowl before him with great care. "Ananda speaks truly," the Buddha said, "but an empty bowl also carries deeper meanings. It is a mirror for the heart." The disciples exchanged glances, each contemplating the enigmatic words. "Imagine this bowl," the Buddha continued, "as a symbol of the mind during creative struggles. What do you see within it?" I looked into the polished surface of my own bowl, seeing only my reflection. "Nothing, Master," I finally admitted. "The bowl is empty, as is the mind during a block." The Buddha smiled, his expression one of profound kindness. "Precisely," he said, "and yet, from emptiness arises infinite potential. Consider the farmer who gazes upon his barren field. Does he curse the soil for its emptiness?" A young disciple shook his head, his voice hesitant. "No, Master. He prepares the field for planting." "Exactly so," the Buddha replied, his gaze sweeping over us like a warm breeze. "The mind, too, must be tilled and prepared. Embrace the emptiness, for it is the ground from which creativity springs." The disciples nodded, their understanding beginning to bloom like morning flowers. The Buddha reached down, picking up a handful of soil from the earth. He let it slip through his fingers, watching as it scattered. "This soil is like your thoughts," he explained. "Do not cling to it, but let it flow freely. In freedom, new ideas take root." "Master," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "how do we nurture this freedom when doubt weighs heavily upon us?" The Buddha turned to me, his gaze steady yet gentle. "Doubt is the shadow cast by the light of possibility," he said. "Do not fear it, for it points toward the sun." He picked up his empty bowl, holding it aloft for all to see. "This bowl is a vessel, waiting to be filled," he said, "but its purpose is not fulfilled by clinging to its emptiness or its contents. It serves by being open." The day unfolded, and the Buddha led us to the village, our bowls still empty. The villagers were preoccupied with their struggles, offering little more than hurried glances. Some disciples grew disheartened, their steps heavy with discouragement. "Master," one of them said, "our efforts seem futile. The bowl remains empty." The Buddha paused, turning to face the disciple with a calm yet penetrating gaze. "Is it the bowl or the mind that is truly empty?" he asked. The disciple faltered, his answer lost in the weight of the question. "Remember this," the Buddha continued. "An empty bowl is not a failure but an opportunity." As we returned to the banyan tree, the sun began its descent, painting the sky with hues of amber and crimson. The Buddha's gaze rested gently upon the tree, a symbol of resilience in the face of nature's relentless and unpredictable force. He began, his voice calm and measured. "This tree endures not because of luck or strength but because of its deeply grounded roots. Let me tell you a story," the Buddha said, his voice carrying the rhythm of ancient wisdom. "There was once a sculptor who wished to create the most beautiful statue. He stared at a block of stone, paralyzed by its solidity. Days turned to weeks, and still, he could not begin." The disciples leaned in, their attention caught by the tale. One day, the Buddha continued. A wise traveler approached and said, "Why do you hesitate?" The sculptor replied, "I see only a block of stone." Another day, another village filled with restless chatter and hurried footsteps echoed through its narrow streets. The Buddha observed silently. The Buddha's eyes sparkled as he looked at each of us in turn. Creativity is not about forcing the mind to create but about uncovering what already exists within. The block of stone is like your creative mind, appearing solid and impenetrable, but beneath it lies infinite potential, waiting to be revealed. The disciples bowed before the tree in reverence, silently thanking it for teaching them truths revealed in its enduring presence. The Buddha continued. Like the Bodhi tree, resilience begins not when the storm arrives, but when our roots grow before adversity. Chip away at the edges, one moment at a time. Trust the process, and the statue will emerge. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving us bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The Buddha rose, his presence like a beacon in the gathering darkness. "Remember this, my friends," he said. "An empty bowl is not a void but a space for transformation. Embrace the emptiness, for it is the doorway to creation." The Bodhi tree does not resist the wind. It bends, adapts, and grows stronger. For resilience lies in flexible strength. Mahakassapa asked, "Master, is resilience an act of fighting against adversity or flowing harmoniously with it like wind around the tree?" The Buddha said, "Resilience does not fight, it embraces the truth, acknowledging adversity while finding the wisdom to flow without breaking." Another day, the Buddha and his disciples traveled through a lush forest, shaded by ancient trees towering overhead. A merchant approached them, bowing deeply, holding a tangled bundle of threads in his hands, his face troubled. "Master," the merchant said, "I can no longer create. My mind feels as tangled as these threads I hold." The Buddha looked at the merchant and gently gestured for him to sit beside the group in the shade. "My friend," the Buddha said, "the mind often mirrors what we see, feel, and believe about our struggles." A distant rumble of thunder echoed as the grove stood tall, an eternal reminder of resilience manifested in its enduring strength. Sariputta said, "Master, your teachings are like seeds. Each word grows within us, forming roots that connect us to resilience itself." "This leaf," the Buddha said, "was once attached to a branch, yet now it lies separated, completely free." The disciples watched closely as the Buddha placed the leaf gently on the earth, allowing the wind to move it. The leaf does not cling to its branch, for it knows that change is its natural state. The Buddha continued. The merchant listened, his gaze fixed on the simple, gentle movements of the leaf in the wind. Night fell over the grove, yet the disciples sat grounded and still, their hearts rooted in the teachings of the Enlightened One. The Bodhi tree stood tall amidst shadows, its presence an eternal testament to resilience born from profound and grounding truths. He pointed to the bundle of threads the merchant had laid before him, its knots defying any immediate attempt to unravel. "If you yank at this bundle with impatience," the Buddha said, "the knots will only grow tighter and more unyielding." "Master," Sujata whispered, kneeling before him, "I feel as though life's cruelty has erased every shred of my inner strength." The Buddha looked upon her with unwavering compassion, his presence calming her trembling hands and steadying the storm within. "Let your breath guide you, steady and slow. As the river flows." The merchant obeyed, inhaling and exhaling deeply, his breath a gentle rhythm that began to soothe his trembling hands. The Buddha smiled. "The jewel is not seen with eyes but realized through introspection. Its light exists even beneath life's dirt." Sujata hesitated and asked, "Master, how do I uncover this jewel when shadows of betrayal and suffering cloud my thoughts entirely?" The Buddha continued, "Begin by recognizing your suffering. allowing yourself to feel it fully. For shadows cannot obscure an awakened mind. Master, the merchant said softly, his eyes still closed. I feel the threads of my mind softening, releasing their hold on me. The Buddha placed a hand gently on the merchant's shoulder. When you soften your grip, the threads follow, yielding to patience. The disciples exchanged glances, understanding that this teaching extended beyond the merchant to their own struggles with creation. Open your eyes, the Buddha said to the merchant. Pick up your bundle of threads, but do not pull too hard. The merchant opened his eyes, his hands steady as he carefully began entangling the first knot in the bundle. The first knot, the Buddha observed, represents your doubts. Untie it, and clarity will reveal itself in the threads beneath. The merchant worked slowly, his fingers moving with intention, unraveling the first knot as a glimmer of ease emerged. As you untie each knot, the Buddha said, do so with the awareness that each knot teaches its own lesson. The merchant nodded, a faint smile forming on his lips as he continued to work, the threads gradually falling loose. When creation feels blocked, the Buddha said to all gathered, it is not force that liberates but a return to presence. Master, a disciple spoke. How can we remember patience when doubt clouds our sight and frustration grips our hearts? The Buddha pointed to the forest around them. When you are lost, do you not first stop and seek the path anew? The disciple lowered his head in thought, understanding the wisdom of pausing rather than pushing blindly forward to untangle your mind. The Buddha continued, you must first release the need to conquer it. Be still and listen. The merchant held up the bundle of threads, now unraveled, its lengths flowing freely and ready to be woven anew. My mind feels lighter, the merchant said, bowing deeply before the Buddha, and my hands are eager to create again. The Buddha smiled. Your hands are eager because your mind no longer holds the weight of unnecessary knots. The merchant rose, his footsteps lighter as he departed, carrying the untangled threads as a symbol of his renewed spirit. The disciples sat in silence, absorbing the lesson, their own minds turning toward the knots they carried within themselves. One disciple reached into his bag, producing a half-finished scroll, its ink markings faint and hesitant. Master, the disciple said, I stopped writing because I feared my words were inadequate, unworthy of completion. The Buddha regarded the scroll, then said, what you write is not the final truth, but a stepping stone to clarity. The disciple blinked, uncertain. But what if my words lead me further into confusion instead of understanding? He asked hesitantly. The Buddha traced a line in the earth with a small stick, then brushed it away with his hand. What you erase, the Buddha said, is not a failure but part of the process that clears the path forward. The disciple took up his brush, inspired to continue writing, understanding that imperfections were merely markers on his journey. Master, another disciple asked, what if the knots in our minds are too numerous to unravel in one lifetime? The Buddha lifted his gaze to the sky, where clouds floated effortlessly, drifting without resistance against the wind. Do the clouds lament their journey? The Buddha asked. They simply move, shape-shifting as they go, without clinging to form. The disciples contemplated this, realizing that even small progress toward entangling a single knot held its own profound significance. The forest grew dim as the sun set, yet the disciples felt their inner paths illuminated by the day's teachings. The Buddha stood, his robes flowing gently as the evening breeze swayed through the trees, his presence calm and steady. Each knot you untie, the Buddha said, frees not just your mind but the space for something new to emerge. The disciples bowed low, gratitude filling their hearts as they vowed to face their creative blocks with renewed patience. That night, under a starry sky, they began their own works, their breaths steady, their threads entangling knot by knot. Another day, the Buddha and his disciples arrived at a riverbank. Its waters gently flowing past rocks and reeds. The disciples gathered around the Buddha, observing the river's current and the large stones protruding above its surface. "Master," Ananda said, "why does the river not move the stones from its path? They obstruct the flow of water." The Buddha smiled softly. "The river flows not to conquer the stone, but to embrace it, shaping its journey around resistance." The disciples listened intently as the Buddha knelt by the water, letting the cool stream flow over his hands. "Observe," the Buddha said, "how the river does not halt for the stone, nor does it lose its purpose." A younger disciple spoke hesitantly. "But Master, does this mean we must always accept obstacles and never seek to remove them?" The Buddha picked up a small pebble, holding it before the group, its surface smooth from countless years in the river. "Tell me," the Buddha said, "does this pebble resist the river? Or has it been shaped by its gentle persistence?" The younger disciple observed the pebble closely, noticing its polished surface and how the water continued to flow effortlessly around it. "The pebble does not resist," the disciple replied. "It allows the river's flow to refine it without opposition." The Buddha placed the pebble back into the water. "So too must you allow challenges to refine, not hinder, your path." The Buddha took a step closer, his presence grounding and compassionate, and picked up a fallen leaf from the forest floor. "This leaf," he said, "is part of the tree's story, as the tree is part of the earth's tale." A merchant approached the group, carrying a heavy load of goods. His expression was weary, his movements labored. "Master," the merchant said, setting down his load, "my burdens are many, and they weigh heavily on my heart and mind." The Buddha invited the merchant to sit by the riverbank, motioning for him to observe the water's unceasing journey. "Do you see," the Buddha asked, "how the river carries leaves, twigs, and sediment without faltering in its purpose?" The merchant nodded. "Yes, Master, but what does this teach me about the burdens I carry every day?" The Buddha reached into the water, lifting a handful of wet sand, which slowly sifted through his fingers. "When you grip too tightly," the Buddha said, "you carry more weight. When you release, the burden becomes lighter." A nearby stream murmured softly, its water glinting in the dappled sunlight, drawing the attention of the disciples gathered. The Buddha knelt by the stream, letting its gentle flow caress his fingertips. The merchant opened his eyes, looking at the load he had carried and realizing he could choose what to release. Another disciple spoke. "Master, some burdens cannot be set down, for they are responsibilities we must carry through life." The Buddha nodded, acknowledging the truth of the disciples' words. "Even the river carries sediment, yet it remains in motion." The disciple lowered his gaze. Ananda watched the monk's hands, now holding both pebble and leaf, his thoughts reflecting on the teachings imparted. "Master," Ananda asked, "how do we share this balance with others in a world so consumed by separation?" The Buddha pointed to the rising sun, its light touching both the forest and the stream, illuminating their union. "It floats because it is hollow, unburdened by excess weight or resistance." The disciples watched as the reed moved with the current, avoiding rocks and flowing gracefully toward the horizon. "Make space within your mind," the Buddha said, "so that you may carry responsibilities without letting them overwhelm your spirit." The merchant rose, bowing deeply. "Master, I understand. I will let go of what I do not need and carry only what matters." The Buddha smiled warmly. "When you flow like the river, you discover that even challenges can guide you toward greater strength." The disciples sat in quiet contemplation, their thoughts drifting like the river, reflecting on their own obstacles and burdens. One disciple asked, "Master, what if we lose our way entirely, unable to see the current that guides us forward?" The Buddha gazed at the horizon, where the river disappeared into the distance, its path unseen but certain. Each represents a piece of the whole, never solitary, always interconnected. Ananda asked, Master, is interconnectedness found only in nature, or does it extend to human relationships and actions as well? The Buddha pointed to the footprints left by their journey, marking the path they had walked together. The disciple nodded, feeling a sense of calm as he imagined the unseen yet unbroken journey of the river. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the water, the group rose, ready to continue their travels. The Buddha spoke once more. The river does not resist the stone. The Buddha nodded, his expression serene and encouraging. As the birds sang and the stream flowed in harmony, the disciples followed the monk toward the forest's edge, their own hearts lighter and thoughts enriched by the Buddha's teachings. That night, under the canopy of stars, they rested by the river, their minds lighter and their hearts more open. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.